Helmut Marko has caused some controversy with his latest statements about Sergio Perez, and although the Mexican driver cost them quite a lot in terms of reputation and performance difference with Verstappen, Red Bull seems to have taken Perez's side on this matter. With everything that has been said and done in the past couple of weeks, and with things going to the extent of Marko actually subtle firing Perez in a recent statement a couple of days ago, it seems like the relationship between the veteran Austrian and his compatriot team will fall down first rather than Perez won. But is this something that Horner has been plotting for quite some time after Marko's first failure with Nyck de Vries? And if so, how will all of this turn out for Sergio Perez? It's safe to say that Helmut Marko is one of the fiercest critics in the sport, which arguably gives him the title of one of the most hated personas in the sport. If there are some fans of Marko out there, don't jump on to attack me right away, I'm just stating the obvious. His reputation and some of the statements he's made are quite derogatory and discriminatory, and to take things to a further extent, he made that kind of joke for Sergio Perez, the Red Bull's driver. It's obvious that Perez has been the thorn in the eye for Marko, and one of the main reasons why is that Marko's role in the team is quite clear, and that's to promote young drivers to Red Bull's maximum level possible. And in this scenario, the maximum level is being Verstappen's teammate. For things to be even more bizarre, Marko claims that he's the one bringing Perez to the Red Bull seat, and now all of a sudden he's been making statements that there's no place in the team for the 33-year-old driver. But hold on, we'll get to that point later in our video. We've seen that being Verstappen's teammate doesn't always end well for the drivers, such as the case with Gasly and Albon, but nonetheless, Red Bull has the most competent machinery out there, and that's currently the only seat that could provide any chance for a championship-winning season for Verstappen's teammates. Perez is by no means a young driver, and he didn't come from Red Bull's academy, one of the few exceptions the team has made when signing him back at the end of the 2020 season. Therefore, Marko has been actively bidding against Perez's continuation of the deal, and even when the veteran driver had a couple of strong starts to the season, such as in 2022 and 2023, Marko has insisted that he doesn't have the championship mentality to fight with Verstappen. I'm not saying he's wrong, but going out in public and shaming your second driver is definitely what a team doesn't need in such a highly anticipated season. So be that as it may, slowly but surely, Marko has started to become a liability in Red Bull. We must also not forget the fact that he was very close with the late owner of the team, Dietrich Mateschitz, and apart from Horner, it seems like the new leadership establishment led by Oliver Mintzlaff is going to have second thoughts about keeping Marko in the team for the foreseeable future. Everything can be traced back to Red Bull's new ownership, as a power struggle is currently present in the team since the death of Dietrich Mateschitz, the late co-founder of the company. It was believed that his son Mark would take over the company, but now the Thai shareholders in Red Bull are trying to pull more and more of the strings, and they're pushing towards a different direction for both Red Bull and AlphaTauri than what Marko would want. And Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, is actually backed up by the Thai shareholders. So since Dietrich's passing, Horner has been trying to gain full control of Red Bull Group's motorsport activities. In doing so, the Brit would have the support of Oliver Mintzlaff and would turn his back directly on Marko, who was Dietrich's right-hand man. And one activity that Horner has been actively bidding for in the previous period is getting rid of Helmut Marko, as recent reports state that the board of Red Bull Racing will have a meeting this week in which they'll decide about the future of the veteran Austrian in the team. This is actually the first time that his future in the team will be discussed, and the first time that Marko has to be afraid of what's coming towards him, especially after the statements that put Marko in the position in which he's currently in. These controversial statements that put Marko where he is right now are something that he definitely wishes he could turn back the clock on and not say a word on Perez and his performance in 2023 having to do with his nationality. Combine that with Dietrich passing away and with brand new leadership that wants to take things in a totally different direction, and things are not looking quite so good for Marko right now. Although some of the statements he made were perceived as kind of light jokes, such as in France 2022 when Perez got passed by Russell in a clumsy way after the VSC restart in the finishing laps of the race. This is where Marko said that Perez probably had 1 tequila too many before the race, and that's why the passing has been made in such an easy manner. But this is not where it all ends with the Austrian veteran. There are two situations that have worsened Marko's situation with Red Bull recently, and both of them are related to Red Bull's driver, Sergio Perez. The first one is the fact that Marko said the primary reason why Perez is struggling so much with the performance is his origin, which is South American. And while he tried to get himself out of trouble by saying that Mexico isn't a country that produced many drivers, therefore it's a massive success for Perez to be where he is right now, nobody bought the excuses, not even Red Bull. After a couple of days went by since his initial statement, Marko went on to apologise to Perez in a formal letter, an action that is believed to have been caused directly by Horner and the team, because the last thing they need right now after the budget cap breach from 2021 has settled down is another inter-team drama. Yet many drivers have gone on to slam Marko for what he said, especially Hamilton, who said that he's not surprised that Marko made these comments, as he's notoriously known for doing such things in the F1 world. Furthermore, Hamilton slammed Red Bull for not taking any additional action towards Helmut Marko, as the 7-time world champion believed that firing him and cutting all ties would be the best possible solution. But there is one thing here that we need to understand. Marko isn't really directly tied down with Red Bull in a contractual manner, and therefore Red Bull, more precisely Christian Horner, don't really have the power to fire him immediately, at least not Horner. But what the Brit has been reportedly doing in the past couple of weeks is lobbying to the main company back in Austria about the liability that Marko has become, and if the team decides these claims are true, the relationship might break very soon. The second statement that deepened Marko's situation with Red Bull is his stance on Sergio Perez and the foreseeable future of the Mexican driver, and when talking about this, Marko said that the 33-year-old needs a change of team. Furthermore, he went on to elaborate, he needs a change of scenery and team. Let's see how the next 2 races go, but the team and he are aware that he is in crisis. Will Perez leave Red Bull for his own sake? You don't want to hear an answer from me on that just before the Mexican GP. Red Bull's popularity has been skyrocketing in Central America, especially in Mexico, where they have their own race winner to cheer for, even though his results have been quite disappointing if you compare them with Verstappen. Be that as it may, we need to understand that Verstappen, of course, is in a league of his own, and while Perez is not at the level of the Dutchman, having only a 30-point lead over Hamilton for P2 in the Drivers' Championship is not an acceptable result either. Still, the statements have been made by Marko towards Perez and have forced Red Bull to take some action, and it seems like pushing Marko to apologise for them won't be enough. There are many reports from renowned media such as the Brazilian outlet Globo that the tensions between Horner and Marko are on the rise, and they've started back where Marko insisted Red Bull should sign Nyck de Vries and put him in an AlphaTauri seat, something that Marko himself admitted to be true, as he said this was one of the few times he and Horner got into a fight for something in Red Bull. But lots of things happened from there on, and with all the recent statements and actions from Marko, he's been mounting a lot of damage to the team's reputation and their figure in Mexico. With him stating that he doesn't want to give an answer for Perez's future before his home GP, it seems like the team is going to lose a massive chunk of fans, not only from Mexico but from other parts of the world, where fans are not just going to want to cheer for a team that has such a way of working things out with their drivers. Horner is now pushing towards full control of Red Bull's entire F1 operation, which would effectively grant him the option to fire any personnel he doesn't see fit, especially drivers and managers who are hurting the team with their statements and performances. This is an indirect attempt to get things done as swiftly as possible, and with Horner currently having a great influence on AlphaTauri, Red Bull's sister team, Marko's knowledge and presence might not be needed in the team after all. Another point of fight between Horner and Marko seems to be Yuki Tsunoda, with the Brit wanting the Japanese driver gone with Honda from 2026 onwards, while Marko has publicly stated that Tsunoda has a contract with Red Bull and not Honda, and if Honda wants to poach him away in Aston Martin from 2026 onwards, they'd have to talk with them first. But the situation between Marko and Red Bull clearly is very tense right now. And after everything that Marko has put the team through with his statements in 2022 and 2023, it seems like his time may have run its course. Do you think that Marko will be sacked by Red Bull? Let us know in the comments below.